Welcome to your daily news brief and today's deep dive. So, imagine a massive stone fortress.
Right, like the ultimate projection of power. You've got the high walls, the iron gates.
Exactly. You look at it and think, well, the only way that thing falls is if a much bigger army comes along with a giant battering ram.
But if you actually study the history of sieges, fortresses rarely fall to brute force.
Yeah, they fall from the inside. Someone leaves the side door unlatched, or maybe the ground beneath the foundation slowly shifts.
Or the garrison inside just stops believing in the king and opens the gates themselves.
Right, it's never the obvious threat. It's the unseen variables, the internal mechanics, the shifting loyalties that actually disrupt entrenched power.
And that unseen friction is exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Because today's stack of sources is massive. We're looking at 11 distinct updates from April 10th, 2026, elections, global geopolitics, healthcare, sports.
I mean, on the surface, they seem completely disconnected.
But there's a very clear unifying theme here, and that is disruptions of power. We're watching established systems try to maintain their grip while human unpredictability pushes back.
So we're going to guide you through this heavy stack of information so you can walk away with the big picture without feeling, totally overwhelmed.
Let's jump right into the foundational mechanism of power, the ballot box. We are seeing absolutely staggering turnout numbers from the recent assembly elections.
Staggering is the right word.
I mean, Puducherry just hit an all-time record of 91.2%. Assam broke its historical records at 85.8%, and Kerala hit 78.2%.
Which is their highest since, 1987?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But these aren't just spontaneous bursts of civic duty, are they? There's a mechanical reason these percentages are suddenly so high.
Well, yeah, you really have to look at the math behind the turnout. The Election Commission recently conducted these intensive revisions of the electoral rolls.
Right.
They essentially cleaned house. They removed deceased voters, people who moved away, duplicate entries.
So they shrank the denominator.
Precisely. I mean, in Kerala, the total electorate shrank by about 9 lakh voters.
Oh, wow.
So if you have the same number of people voting but a smaller total list, your turnout percentage naturally spikes.
That makes total sense.
But the other side of that is the door-to-door enumeration process itself. When officials are constantly showing up to verify your status, it acts as this massive unintended voter awareness campaign.
It mobilizes everyone.
Exactly.
And the mobilization is intense. You've got voters in Kerala standing in brutal heat with lines extending way past closing time.
Yeah, in Thiruvananthapuram, they were even handing out holla boxes to first-time voters.
That's amazing. But the raw numbers obscure some really fascinating regional shifts. Like in Assam, Muslim-majority constituencies saw a massive surge.
Right, places like Dalgaon hit 94.5%.
But then in Upper Assam, which is predominantly Hindu-majority belt, the turnout actually dipped to about 82%.
Which introduces a highly complex variable for the political models. Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma has been predicting a huge sweep for the BJP.
Yeah, he suggested they could win 90 or more of the 126 seats.
But when demographic turnouts shift unpredictably like that, well, those predictive models really get tested.
Okay, so shrinking the denominator increases the turnout percentage. But what happens when shrinking that denominator becomes the central political battleground itself?
You're talking about West Bengal.
Yes. They just went through a special intensive revision of their rolls, and 90 lakh voters were deleted.
That is just an astronomical number.
Right. And the booth-level data is where this becomes a profound disruption. Of the 90 lakh people removed, roughly 63%, so about 57.47 lakh, are Hindus.
And 34%, which is around 31.1 lakh, are Muslims.
Now, just to be crystal clear to you listening, our job here is solely to look at the raw data impartially. We aren't taking any political side here. The context is that Muslims make up about 27% of West Bengal's population.
Right, which means their deletion rate of 34% is disproportionately high relative to their overall population.
Even though Hindus account for the largest absolute number of deletions.
Exactly. And politically, the reactions are sharply divided. The BJP defends it as a necessary process to remove illegal infiltrators from Bangladesh.
While all the other major political parties vehemently oppose it, claiming it's targeted disenfranchisement.
But the mechanics of who actually got deleted are fascinating, because it's not spread evenly at all.
No, not at all. The Hindu deletions were exceptionally concentrated in border constituencies, places dominated by the Matua community.
Right. These are Hindu Namasudras who migrated from Bangladesh and have been waiting for citizenship under the CAA.
In the Baghdad constituency alone, over 46,000 Hindus were removed. And in districts with very low Muslim populations, like Chargram, Hindus accounted for 94% of the deletions.
So literally 2 weeks before polling, the actual guest list for the election is radically altered.
It's wild. You have this massive public assertion of democratic power in states like Kerala, where people are sweating in lines, and then you have a completely different mechanism of power transfer happening simultaneously in Bihar.
Ah, the closed-door mechanism.
Exactly. Millions are standing in the sun to vote, while the leadership of Bihar might change because of a few quiet meetings in Delhi and a Rajya Sabha oath.
Yeah, Chief Minister Nitish Kumar traveled to Delhi and took an oath as a Rajya Sabha member. The signals heavily point to his imminent resignation.
And the BJP is currently holding core committee meetings, right, to install its first-ever chief minister in Bihar.
They are. You've got names like Deputy Chief Minister Semrat Chaudhary as a front-runner. Assembly Speaker Prem Kumar is in the mix, too.
Even Nitish Kumar's son is being floated for a deputy role. I just find the contrast so striking.
It really is.
The public executes their power through the ballot, but the actual executive structure is being renegotiated via these institutional loopholes.
And this backroom shuffling is exactly why leader of the opposition, Tejashwi Yadav, is calling it a game of musical chairs.
That's a perfect description.
Plus, there's a constitutional quirk here. Technically, Nitish Kumar could continue as chief minister for up to 6 months, even after entering the Rajya Sabha.
Wait, really? So if he digs his heels in, what happens?
Well, the BJP has hinted they might push for president's rule if he does that.
Wow. Which actually perfectly illustrates our next point. We've been talking about democratic power, how people vote, but there's another kind of power that doesn't rely on the ballot box at all.
Right, top-down executive rule-making.
Exactly. The state simply writing a rule and expecting perfect compliance. And we are seeing a profound acceleration of that, starting with the digital realm.
Yeah, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, MIREA, has proposed sweeping amendments to the 2021 IT rules.
And they gave the public, what, exactly 15 days to review and comment?
15 days for rules that fundamentally alter the Internet. The Internet Freedom Foundation is sounding the alarm on this very loudly.
Because they argue it's a massive expansion of unchecked executive power, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
Over online speech and privacy. For one, the new rules mandate that digital platforms retain user data for 180 days.
Wait, 180 days. So if I go in and delete my account or delete a message, the platform still holds a copy of everything for 6 months.
Yep, they have to keep it.
That seems like a massive vulnerability. I mean, every time a company is hacked, the blast radius is just 6 months wider.
It directly contradicts global data minimization principles, but the IFF is even more concerned about changes to Rule 3, Sub-Rule 4.
What does that one do?
It deals with safe harbor under Section 79 of the IT Act. Safe harbor is the legal principle that protects a platform from being sued for what its users post.
Okay, let me try an analogy here. Safe harbor is kind of like the Postal Service.
Mm-hmm.
If I mail a defamatory letter to someone, you can't sue the post office. They just deliver the envelope.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right.
But the proposed amendment says that to keep that safe harbor protection, platforms must comply with essentially any executive-issued instrument.
Meaning what, exactly?
We're talking about non-public advisories, standard operating procedures, internal memos.
So if the mayor sends a secret memo to the post office saying, stop delivering mail to this specific neighborhood, and the post office refuses because it's not an actual law.
Then the post office suddenly becomes legally liable for every single piece of mail they handle. Yes.
That is terrifying.
If a platform pushes back against an opaque, non-public government advisory, they lose their legal immunity. It bypasses parliamentary debate entirely.
The government can essentially dictate content moderation through private memos.
And it empowers an interdepartmental committee to act as a freestanding censorship body. They can take up issues without a formal complaint or public hearing.
That is the ultimate top-down mandate, just assuming you can architect digital behavior purely through executive fiat.
But it's not just the digital space where this assumption is causing friction. The exact same logic is playing out in the military apparatus right now.
Yeah, the protests at Rajghat.
Exactly. Retired Central Armed Police Force CAPF personnel and their families are protesting the new CAPF General Administration Act of 2026.
And the mechanics of this are wild, because the CATF has its own dedicated cadre of officers who spend their entire careers rising through the ranks.
Right. But this new law mandates heavy deputation of Indian Police Service, or IPS, officers into their ranks.
Just bringing them in from the outside.
Yes. We are talking about reserving 50% of inspector general posts, 67% of additional director general posts, and a full 100% of the top director general posts for outside IPS officers.
Wait, didn't the Supreme Court literally rule against this just last year?
They did. In May 2025, the Supreme Court recognized that CAPF officers were facing severe career stagnation.
Right.
So they directed the Home Ministry to progressively reduce IPS deputation to open up those top roles.
So you have 13,000 cadre officers who spent a decade fighting this in court. They finally win. The judiciary says, yes, you deserve these promotions.
And the executive branch just writes a new law that completely overrides the Supreme Court ruling.
It's unbelievable. It legally enforces the exact system the court told them to dismantle.
An officer joining the CAPF as an assistant commandant routinely waits 15 to 18 years just for their first promotion. This new act entrenches that bottleneck indefinitely.
It's just the state prioritizing its own hierarchical control over the actual organic structure of the institution. Are we seeing a pattern here of the state prioritizing rapid compliance over actual feasibility?
It definitely looks like it. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a growing gap between executive mandates and ground realities.
It feels like ordering a school to build a roof before the foundation is poured, which actually brings us to the CBSE third language mandate.
Right. The Central Education Board ordered all affiliated schools to implement a mandatory third language for Class 6 students within 7 days.
7 days, which, sounds like a standard bureaucratic deadline until you realize they haven't actually printed the textbooks.
No, they haven't. The circular actually acknowledges the lack of materials. It just tells schools to rely on teacher-developed content or temporary digital resources.
I mean, think about the logistics of that. A principal gets an email on Monday. By next Monday, they have to reorganize the entire timetable, find a qualified teacher for a new language, tell the parents,
and then tell the teacher, oh, by the way, invent a curriculum from scratch by Tuesday.
It's absurd. The bureaucracy assumes that a mandate equals reality. They think passing the rule is the hard part.
Yeah, and that the system will simply mold itself to comply.
Right. It's the assumption that the system is perfectly compliant. But what happens when the system is actually fragile? We've looked at the government asserting total control over data, military ranks, schools. But when you look at the basic functions of state administration, we are seeing profound systemic fractures.
And you can see that breakdown really clearly in financial oversight. In Haryana, a 550 crore rupee bank scam has completely exposed vulnerabilities in government fund disbursement.
It led to the suspension of 2 IAS officers, right? Ram Kumar Singh and Pardeep Kumar.
Yes, which is quite rare, and the CBI has just taken over the probe.
But how does over $500 million rupees just vanish from a state government?
Through the black box of shell companies, entities with names like Swastik Desh Project and SRR Planning Gurus. They were set up specifically to siphon these funds.
Unbelievable.
The FIR details how unauthorized payments were systematically routed through small finance banks, specifically AU Small Finance Bank and IDFC First Bank.
So they use smaller, newer banking institutions, probably hoping the compliance and oversight mechanisms aren't as rigorous as the massive national banks.
Exactly. It exploits the seams between government accounting and commercial banking protocols. The fact that this went unnoticed long enough to drain 550 crores, it suggests a complete failure of internal departmental audits.
We just talked about the government wanting sweeping control over our digital data, yet here we see profound institutional failures, missing $500 million rupees. But a financial scam, as damaging as it is still just numbers on a ledger.
Right.
The darkest reality of systemic failure is when the state struggles to maintain basic security, and that is exactly what we're seeing in Manipur.
The situation in Manipur's Bishnupur district is a tragic example of institutions losing their grip on public order. A bomb attack in a residential area killed 5 people,
Including a 5-year-old boy and a 6-month-old girl. It is just horrific.
It is. And the immediate reaction wasn't to look to the police for justice. It was an instantaneous explosion of public rage.
Because the trust in the institution of security is completely gone at this point.
Exactly. The resulting vacuum is incredibly volatile. Residents immediately blocked highways, they set trucks on fire. A mob stormed a nearby CRPF camp, allegedly attempting to raid it for weapons.
Oh, wow.
The security personnel opened fire, and 3 protesters were killed.
So when the foundation cracks, the state has to pull every emergency lever it has left. They imposed an indefinite curfew across 5 districts.
And they enacted a complete internet and mobile data blackout, even targeting broadband and VPNs just to stop the spread of panic.
And the National Investigation Agency took over, using helicopter surveillance. It is the blunt force of state power trying to reestablish a baseline of peace.
It really demonstrates how incredibly fragile civil order is when institutional trust evaporates.
It is a very sobering contrast. Let's zoom out for a second, though, because this tension between entrenched systems trying to maintain control and unexpected variables causing disruption, it isn't just a local issue. It dictates the global economy.
Oh, absolutely. Just look at the Strait of Hormuz. It is a massive geographical choke point. Roughly 20% of the world's oil supply flows through that narrow stretch of water.
And right now, there is a very delicate 2-day ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran. But the way power is being leveraged here is entirely new.
Yeah, we aren't just talking about military blockades anymore. We are talking about crypto tolls.
Crypto tolls.
The Financial Times reported that Iran is planning to impose cryptocurrency-based fees on shipping firms passing through the strait.
That is a brilliant, albeit totally disruptive mechanism.
Yeah.
I mean, usually if a country is sanctioned like Iran, they are locked out of SWIFT. They can't process a standard toll fee.
But by demanding payment in cryptocurrency, they completely bypass the traditional financial architecture.
They're using decentralized digital money to enforce a physical toll on the most critical energy artery in the world.
And Donald Trump immediately took to Truth Social to issue a warning over it.
He warned Tehran that they better stop now, right? Insisting the oil will flow regardless.
He did. And he also took a moment to criticize the Wall Street Journal's editorial board for suggesting his declaration of victory in the region was premature.
Standard.
Yeah.
So you have a geographic choke point threatening the oil market. But I want to pivot to a different kind of choke point. Because if the Strait of Hormuz is a physical bottleneck for energy, a patent is a legal bottleneck for medicine.
Right. It's a walled garden.
And that choke point just broke in India.
We are talking about Novo Nordisk's semaglutide. This is a blockbuster GLP-1 drug used for diabetes and weight loss.
It basically mimics a hormone that regulates appetite. It's essentially a miracle drug for the market.
But it just hit a patent cliff in India, meaning its exclusive local patent expired.
And the mechanics of the market took over instantly. Dozens of Indian generic companies just flooded the market with highly affordable, identical versions.
According to PharmaRec, semaglutide's share of India's GLP-1 drug category jumped from 25% in February to 33% in March alone.
That is rapid adoption. But the mechanism that I find absolutely fascinating here is the collateral damage. Novo Nordisk's patent expired, but it actually hit their rival, Eli Lilly.
Yes. What's fascinating here is that Eli Lilly produces a competing drug called tirzepatide. It is a newer, highly potent drug, and crucially, it is still under patent protection in India.
So no one can make a generic version of Eli Lilly's drug.
Right, but its market share still plummeted. It dropped from 71% to 64% in that exact same 30-day window.
Because even if your specific drug is protected by a legal patent, the moment a highly effective, incredibly cheap alternative becomes available right next to it, your monopoly power evaporates.
Consumers and prescribers simply shift to the affordable option. India is acting as a global test case for how generic affordability can break open entire healthcare markets, regardless of individual patent statuses.
The market just reroutes around the roadblock.
Yeah.
Okay, we have covered some incredibly heavy systemic disruptions today. We've looked at demographic voting math, massive internet regulations, financial black holes, geopolitical crypto tolls, and pharmaceutical patent cliffs.
Massive, faceless system.
Exactly. But to close this out, I want to look at what happens when the disruption isn't a market force or a legal ruling. What happens when the disruption is just one unpredictable human being?
We have to talk about the IPL match between the Lucknow Supergiants and the Kolkata Knight Riders.
It is the perfect palate cleanser. Let's set the stage. KKR posts a solid 181 for 4. LSG is chasing 182, and they are falling apart. They're at 128 for 7.
If you look at the predictive algorithms, the system's built on thousands of historical data points. KKR's win probability was sitting at 86% heading into the final overs.
The algorithm was essentially playing chess, and it declared checkmate. The math said it was over. But algorithms cannot account for a 21-year-old kid named Mukul Chaudhary deciding to flip the board.
Chaudhary walks to the crease. He starts off slow, just 2 runs off his first 8 balls. But then he completely defies the statistics. He scores 54 not out off just 25 balls.
He smashed 7 sixes. And these weren't lucky edges. He was taking slower bouncers and attempted Yorkers and just launching them into the stands. He even hit an MS Dhoni-style helicopter six over long on.
To put that statistical anomaly into perspective, he became only the second batter since Kieron Pollard in 2013 to score more than 50 runs in the last 4 overs of a successful chase.
And it comes down to the final over. LSG needs 14 runs. The pressure is astronomical. Avesh Khan takes a single. Chaudhary hits a six.
Then 2 dot balls.
The algorithm is probably screaming that it's over again, but Chaudhary digs out a near-wide Yorker for another six. And on the absolute final delivery of the match, they scramble for a leg bye to win it.
Despite the perfectly executed bowling plans, the historical averages, the 86% win probability, sheer human unpredictability, dismantled the entire mathematical model.
And that, right there, is the thread tying this entire deep dive together. We have traveled from the sweeping demographic shifts in the ballot boxes of West Bengal and Assam to the backrooms of Bihar.
We've watched the executive branch try to engineer perfect compliance in our digital lives and our military ranks.
Only to see the tragic reality of institutional failure when the system breaks down in Haryana and Manipur. We've seen Iran try to bypass the global banking system with crypto tolls, and we watch the sheer gravity of generic medicine shatter a pharmaceutical monopoly.
We spend so much time building models and systems, electoral rolls, internet regulations, drug patterns, and win probabilities. But today's sources prove that the most impactful moments in history happen when those systems break.
What stable system in your own life or industry is just one unpredictable variable away from total disruption? And maybe, just maybe, our psychological dependence on these predictive systems actually makes us more vulnerable when that single unpredictable variable finally shows up. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the information around you, and we'll see you next time.